Labor's dream of decarbonising the electricity system without nuclear energy is ruining the economy and the economy's capacity to pay for goods and services Australians need. Labor's plan is to increase the penetration of renewables and solve the intermittency problem renewables create with a green hydrogen plan. What could possibly go wrong? Firstly, the government has underestimated the cost of meeting the demand for a steady flow of electricity from intermittent generation sources like sunlight and wind, or they are making it up as they go along. These costs are in categories known as balancing costs, grid costs and profile costs. When politicians don't recognise these costs, they spread the false idea that solar and wind are the cheapest sources of energy. When the cost of intermittency are recognised, we find natural gas is by far the cheapest form of electricity, followed by coal, then nuclear. If government were to consider the full cost of renewables, they would find solar is 14 times more costly than nuclear energy and wind is 4.7 times more costlier than nuclear. These figures are sourced from Robert Idell's study titled Levelised Full System Costs of Electricity, published in Energy v 259, November 2022. The second problem with the government's plan is the way it wants to overcome the mismatch between the peak supply of renewable energy during the day and the peak demand for electricity, which is at night. The first part of this plan is to build enough wind turbines and solar panels to create excess electricity which can be saved in some form of grid-scale storage. Community objection to wind farms and lack of suitable sites has led to proposals for offshore wind farms, which are 5 to 10 times more expensive, last only 15 years and damage the environment at every stage from construction, operation and decommissioning. The solar farms compete with productive agricultural land because they need to be on a flat land facing the right way. The panels cannot be economically recycled, so end up in landfill, damage the environment as toxic metals leach into the soil and then the water supply. Not to mention also the wind turbines, when they're finished, where do they end up? In landfill. Anyway, let's skip over the problems with generating enough excess renewable energy and pretend there are no problems so we can move on to the next step of the plan, which is to create grid-scale storage. The candidates for grid-scale storage include pumped hydroelectricity, batteries and green hydrogen. Australia has limited sites suitable for pumped hydroelectricity. If the Snowy 2 pump hydro project is ever completed, it could be used to restart the electricity grid after black system, but it is not the answer for grid-scale storage. Batteries are too expensive to act on grid scale, and there are problems with mineral and metal shortages and recycling. Green hydrogen is the government's preferred grid-scale solution to providing electricity when the wind and sunlight do not show up for work. The known technologies for producing green hydrogen need a constant electricity supply, but a constant electricity supply won't be available under the government's plan because they want to use sunlight and wind to create the electricity. The green hydrogen industry is reliant on government handouts, including subsidies, and it has had a reality check when the first commercial-scale green hydrogen project in Western Australia was scrapped this year. There is not one wind farm or solar farm or large-scale battery built in Australia without subsidies from taxpayers, and not one that will continue to operate without subsidies. Just think about that when you are struggling to pay your electricity bill and trying to cope with the cost of living. Labor needs to put people first, not ideology, and it needs to face facts before it ruins this beautiful country. So the fact is, your all pie-in-the-sky schemes aren't going to work. You're costing taxpayers billions of dollars. You're giving multinationals money that belong in the pockets of the Australian people.